Please do something. I cried out desperately, but both my mother-in-law and husband ignored me. Without even glancing at me, covered in blood, they seemed more concerned about the dog that bit me and whether the floor was dirty. With no other choice, I called an ambulance by myself and was taken away alone. I couldn't stop crying in the ambulance. During the transport, after a while, my husband called. He kept shouting in a desperate voice.
Hey! Get the ambulance back! My mother is...
My name is Carla Brown. I'm 34 years old. 4 years ago, I was almost forcibly dragged by a friend to a mixer, who said,
"A drinking party with civil servants. Carla, you're coming, right?"
That's where I met my husband, Oliver, who is 7 years younger than me. My father is a judo instructor, and my mother is a physical education teacher. I grew up in a sports-oriented family with 3 older brothers who all have black belts in judo, so I ended up with a bit of a tomboyish personality. Oliver, on the other hand, was the complete opposite of me. When we first met, the buttons on his shirt were misaligned, one by one, and he stumbled over his words during the toast. He was a nice guy, not a bad person at all, but he seemed to try hard and yet couldn't quite get things right. I found this quality of Oliver endearing, and it triggered my maternal instincts. We went on several dates, and I was the one who suggested we start dating. Oliver always soothed my naturally irritable personality. Before I knew it, I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. Then, on the first anniversary of our relationship, I proposed to him with a bold line, "I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. So let's get married." With tears in his eyes,
Carla, that's supposed to be my line. Thank you for everything. Let's continue to take care of each other.
And that's how we decided to get married. When Oliver first met my parents during our pre-wedding introduction, he was completely intimidated by my stern father and my 3 brothers. My mother said,
"There's no need to be so scared, you know."
To which Oliver replied with a loud,
Yes!
but his voice cracked, and the whole family burst into laughter. My father said,
"He seems a bit unreliable, but it looks like he really put a lot of thought into the gifts he brought, and I can tell he really loves Carla, which makes me happy too."
After finishing the greetings with my family, it was time to greet Oliver's family next. According to Oliver, his father passed away from cancer 5 years ago. Oliver's parents struggled with infertility, and after 8 years of marriage, they finally had Oliver. Normally, I'm not the type to get nervous, but on this particular day, I was extremely anxious. On the way to meet my mother-in-law, I was overwhelmed with worries. What if she doesn't like me? What if I can't greet her properly? What if she dislikes the age difference? Just then, Oliver, who is usually not very reassuring, said,
Don't worry. My mom is kind, and I think you'll find it easy to talk to her. She's famous in the neighborhood as the always smiling lady.
Really? That makes me feel a little better.
And there's no way anyone could dislike you, Carla.
His words lifted my spirits. We arrived at his family home and rang the doorbell. Nice to meet you. My name is Carla. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. His mother smiled warmly and said,
"Oh, my, you must be Carla. There's no need to be so formal. Come on in."
She was dressed in a beautiful dress and had a refined, gentle demeanor. Regarding the age difference, which I was most concerned about.
What are you talking about? Age doesn't matter at all. I'm so happy that someone like you will be Oliver's wife.
Contrary to my fears, she didn't seem to care about the age difference at all. She responded to everything I said with great enthusiasm, and I had a wonderful time. The conversation shifted to a story about a poodle that my mother-in-law used to have.
Look, isn't it adorable? I had this dog when I was still in elementary school. It was such a friendly and smart dog, but it passed away when it got old.
As she reminisced, my husband chimed in.
Mom, Carla is actually not fond of dogs.
Beth exclaimed.
Carla, you don't like dogs.
Yes, actually. Despite my tomboyish nature, I'm really afraid of dogs. When I was a child, I was playing ball with my brothers in the park. The ball flew far away, and when I went alone to retrieve it, a stray dog bit my arm. I ended up bleeding a lot and had to get 4 stitches. Since then, it's been a traumatic experience for me, and I've grown fearful of dogs. Beth responded.
Oh my, I didn't know that happened. I'm so sorry for talking about dogs when you're afraid of them.
No. I'm sorry for making you worry. The poodle in the photo was really cute. Hearing my words, Beth smiled and said,
Thank you.
On the way home with my husband, your mother is really beautiful, kind, and a wonderful person.
I know, right? My mom is always smiling and has such a gentle nature.
That's so nice. She's a lovely mother. We continued talking about her with enthusiasm. Then, suddenly, my husband became serious.
Actually, there's something I want to talk to you about. You know how we visited my family home today?
Yes, it was such a big house. I was really surprised.
Exactly. When my dad was still alive, he designed it with my mom in mind, ensuring that everything was convenient for her. The house even has 3 children's rooms, in case they had more kids. But since I'm an only child, they were never really used. Now, my mom is living there alone, and she finds it too big and lonely. So, I was thinking, what if we lived with her?
I was taken aback by his unexpected proposal, my eyes widening in surprise. It's true, the house was really big, and with my mother-in-law being so meticulous, the house was impeccably maintained. Living in such a house would be a dream, but we're newlyweds, and it feels a bit too soon for that. After thinking for a moment, your mother is a wonderful person, and the house is so beautiful that it feels like too much for me. But we just got married, right? I'd like to enjoy our newlywed life, just the 2 of us, for a little while longer.
I see. You're right. I understand. I'll let my mom know.
Yes. I'm sorry. Please explain it to her gently. I felt a bit guilty towards Beth, but I also knew that it was important to express my own feelings honestly instead of just going along with things. I was relieved that my husband seemed to understand and agree with me. Then, our married life together began. Oliver still had his clumsy moments, but he actively helped with household chores, and we were enjoying a happy and smooth life. However, recently, something has been bothering me a little.
Oh, hello? Mom? Ah, got it. I'm coming over now.
Your mom again.
Yeah, the living room light bulb has burned out. I'll go over and replace it.
And off he went to his parents' house. Lately, it's been like this all the time.
Mom bought a new computer, but she's having trouble setting it up, so I'm heading over to help.
Or,
Mom seems to have bought too many groceries at the supermarket, so she asked me to come pick her up. I'm going to help her out.
whether it was weekdays or weekends, the phone would ring, and Oliver would head back to his parents' house more and more frequently. I started feeling a bit sulky, thinking he could at least spend the weekends at home with me. But at the same time, I thought to myself, Oliver is just a kind and considerate person who cares deeply for his mother. A month had passed since we got married. Just like when we were dating, we had no major arguments or disputes, and our days were peaceful. Today is Beth's birthday. We brought the present and cake that my husband and I had chosen together in advance, and we headed to his parents' house. As soon as we entered the house, a dog suddenly jumped out. What? I widened my eyes in surprise. There hadn't been a dog here when we came for the wedding greeting. Being afraid of dogs, I instinctively hid behind my husband. Then, Beth came out from the living room.
Oh, welcome.
Huh? Mom, where did this dog come from?
Well, I was feeling lonely living alone, so I recently started keeping a dog. Isn't it cute?
It was a small dog, a Welsh corgi. Haha. I see. Startled by the dog that had suddenly jumped out, I forced a smile despite my fear. Without noticing my discomfort.
Come on, Carla, why don't you hold it?
She brought the dog right up to me. I took a step back and said, I mentioned this when we came for the wedding greeting, but I was bitten by a dog when I was younger, and since then, I'm afraid of them. I politely declined to hold the dog.
Oh, did you say that? I didn't know.
She replied, feigning ignorance.
But it's so cute. What a strange person you are.
Her expression seemed to carry a slight smirk. For the first time, I wondered if Beth was being sarcastic towards me. Since then, whenever my husband would say, "Mom wants to see you," or "Let's go visit my mom," "I want to see her too, but I'm really not good with dogs," and started to decline. I couldn't forget the smirk on Beth's face when she saw me uncomfortable that day. A month later, after finishing work as usual and coming home, I found my mother-in-law at the house. What? Why are you? She cheerfully greeted me.
Oh, welcome home.
As if nothing were out of the ordinary, she had let herself into the kitchen, opening the fridge and cooking. Why did you come over so suddenly?
My dear Oliver said he wanted to eat my homemade stew, so I just had to come.
She seemed so delighted by her son's request that she was humming to herself. Oh, I see. I tried my best to smile, but it was hard not to feel tense. Especially since her dog was in the living room. To make matters worse, she had fed the dog, and the dish it was licking clean was my favorite antique plate, which I had bought at a flea market in France. Who could possibly welcome such a situation? I went to my room to put away my bags and coat. Alone, I told myself, I shouldn't get irritated. After all, Beth came all this way. I took a deep breath to calm down and then returned to the living room. To my horror, the dog had made a mess on the living room carpet. No way. The brand new carpet was stained yellow. Oh, my. The dog. On the carpet. I called out to her in a panic, but she showed no sign of concern.
Oh dear, it made a mess right there. Huh.
She said that without scolding the dog or even cleaning up the mess. Knowing that if I left it, the stain would set into the carpet, I ended up cleaning it myself. Honestly. What is this? Even I, usually calm, was extremely frustrated. Then, I heard the sound of the door opening, signaling that my husband had returned home. The dog, reacting to the sound of the door, started barking loudly, woof, woof, and kept barking until my husband entered the living room. Even the sound of the barking was terrifying for me. Once the dog confirmed it was my husband who had come in, it quieted down, and I felt a bit relieved. The three of us sat down at the table to eat the stew Beth had made. During dinner, neither my mother-in-law nor husband put the dog in its cage, so it began to wander around our feet as if hoping for scraps. As my face tightened in fear and I started trembling, Beth remarked,
You really aren't fond of dogs, are you, Carla? You're making such a scared face. I brought the dog today because I wanted to help you overcome your fear of dogs.
Bringing the dog here without asking, using my favorite plate, letting it soil the carpet, and having it bark at me, how could any of this help cure my fear of dogs? If anything, it made me hate them even more. In my mind, I was screaming, if you really care, just put the dog in a cage or somewhere away from me. But my husband seemed completely oblivious to my distress.
Mom is so kind. She's really trying to help you, Carla.
How is this being kind? She's just pretending to care while actually tormenting me.
But you, Carla. This isn't okay.
He started to lecture me. What? I'm the one at fault?
Mom has gone out of her way to do all this for you, and yet you keep avoiding the dog, and you won't even visit my parents' house because of the dog. You're not putting in enough effort, Carla.
Maybe because his mother was right there, my husband began to criticize me more harshly than usual. I'm sorry. I had no choice but to apologize in front of my mother-in-law. I bit my lip, holding back the frustration. After that, Beth started coming to our house frequently, always bringing her dog. Each time, the dog would run around the house and make a mess, but Beth would turn a blind eye. She seemed to have no intention of disciplining it. I was feeling increasingly stressed by these visits. One day, when I felt I had reached my limit, I mustered up the courage to say to her, Please, I've told you many times that I'm afraid of dogs. Could you please stop bringing the dog with you? But then, her expression suddenly changed to one of anger, and she shouted,
I've been thinking for a while now. Are you using your fear of dogs as an excuse to avoid me, Carla? That's terrible.
I had never said anything like that. I was completely shocked and didn't understand what she meant. What surprised me even more was that my husband sided with her.
Carla! That's too much. My mom was thinking of you, but you've been avoiding her? That's incredibly rude. Apologize to her.
Oliver, Beth, you both know I'm afraid of dogs, right? And yet, you keep bringing the dog here, and every time it makes a mess, I'm the one who has to clean it up. This is just too much. But my mother-in-law furrowed her brow and huffed.
At least let me enjoy my time with the dog. You're already too old to have children anyway, so what's the harm?
I was stunned. Is that what you really think?
Isn't it true? You're already 34. It's getting harder to have a baby at your age, isn't it? But my son is only 27. He still has a long future ahead, but thanks to you, his older, arrogant wife.
She started muttering complaints. She had once told me that age didn't matter. I was shocked to learn her true feelings. I couldn't bear to let her stay any longer and hurt me even more. Please, never come here again. My eyes welling up with tears. Perhaps upset by my words, she retorted,
How dare you? You really are an arrogant wife.
And she left, taking her dog with her. From that day on, I began to feel a growing sense of resentment towards both my husband and my mother-in-law. Ever since my husband defended his mother and blamed me, our relationship has been strained, and we haven't been talking much. One weekend, my husband approached me with a serious expression.
Carla, I'm sorry. I was wrong too. I should have considered your feelings more.
Oliver. I felt relieved, thinking he finally understood how I felt. But then he said,
Let's go apologize to Mom now.
What? Why would we do that? Was I in the wrong that day?
It's not about who's right or wrong. Don't make Mom angry. Please, just apologize.
In the end, my husband didn't understand anything. He didn't care about my feelings at all. He forcibly took me to his parents' house. When we arrived, Beth was standing with her hands on her hips, waiting for me. Beth, I'm sorry about the other day. I apologized as my husband had asked, just to calm her down. But then she said,
I'll forgive you if you hold the dog.
That's it. I can't reason with this person. I apologized even though I wasn't in the wrong, and I tried to meet her halfway multiple times. Yet, this is her response. As I've said many times, I can't do that. I responded firmly with a cold expression. Angered by my refusal, my mother-in-law forcefully pushed the dog toward me. Ah! I instinctively pushed the dog away, but in response to my scream, the startled dog bit my hand. It hurts. My hand quickly became soaked in blood. Please do something. I pleaded with my husband and mother-in-law. But Beth said,
Well, anyone would be startled by such a loud noise. Poor thing.
Worrying only about the dog. My husband, to my shock, was checking to see if the floor was dirty. The fact that neither of them showed any concern for me made me utterly disgusted with them. Even amidst all this, the bleeding from my hand wouldn't stop. I managed to shoo the dog away and decided to call an ambulance on my phone. After a while, the ambulance arrived. My mother-in-law scoffed.
Oh, come on. You're being so dramatic, just for a dog bite.
Looking at me with a mocking gaze. My husband, even as the ambulance arrived, didn't change his attitude at all and kept checking the floor. Ignoring these awful people, I pressed my trembling, bleeding hand and got into the ambulance alone. I was filled with anger, pain, and sadness. I couldn't stop crying, alone in the ambulance. During the transport, for some reason, my husband called me. I thought he might actually be worried about me, so I answered the phone. But instead,
Mom! Mom got bitten by the dog. You're still nearby, right? Tell the driver to turn back to our house.
Hearing those words, I felt my feelings for my husband begin to cool rapidly. I didn't care what happened to my mother-in-law. Let them both suffer on their own. With that thought, I silently hung up the phone. When I arrived at the hospital and was examined, The doctor told me that my wound was deeper than expected and that I would need to be hospitalized. Since I hadn't prepared for this, I called my parents and asked them to bring some things for me. After a while, my parents arrived.
Carla, are you okay?
Carla!
They looked at me lying in bed, their faces filled with concern. I'm sorry for making you worry. It still hurts a little, but I'm okay for now.
I see. When we heard that you were taken to the hospital, I was really worried. What happened?
Actually, I told them everything about my mother-in-law's and husband's behavior. My mother hugged me, saying,
You did well.
I had been feeling so alone lately, as if I had no one on my side, and just being able to talk to them made me feel more at ease. However, my father was furious after hearing my story.
I will never forgive them.
I thought he might explode with anger. He was absolutely livid. The next day, I received a call from my husband. Oliver was furious.
What the hell is going on? The police suddenly showed up at our house, and now my mom is being questioned.
I don't know. Maybe the hospital reported it? They asked me how I got injured, so I told them it was your mom's dog that did it.
What? What if Mom gets arrested? This is all your fault for being careless in the first place.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that. But I don't care anymore. Actually, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. Let's get a divorce.
What? We've only been married for 6 months. Getting divorced after just 6 months. Everyone at work and our relatives will laugh at us. It's embarrassing. I'm not divorcing you.
He then hung up the phone on me. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital. On the day of my discharge, my parents came to pick me up, and I decided to go back to my parents' house with them. After that, I consulted a lawyer to handle the divorce and demand alimony from my husband, as there was no reasoning with him. Despite repeated calls from my husband, I ignored them all. Eventually, after another missed call, I received a text message from him.
I'm at the cafe near your parents' house. You'd better come.
If he wanted to talk, he could have come to the house. The fact that he didn't was probably because he didn't want to face my parents. With no other choice, I went to the cafe. The first thing he said was,
I'm not getting a divorce.
I don't care what you want. I'm getting a divorce. There's no way I want to stay with you or your mother after everything that's happened.
Don't speak badly of my mother. It's your fault in the first place. You avoided my mom because you claimed to be afraid of dogs. And the dog bit you because you suddenly screamed.
As he continued to lecture me, my father and my 3 brothers arrived at the cafe. Before coming, I had told my father about the message from my husband, and he had called my brothers to join us. Surrounded by 4 large men who practiced judo, Oliver's voice trembled as he said,
Oh, father-in-law, brothers-in-law.
His cowering posture was almost laughable.
How dare you hurt my daughter?
Our sister wants a divorce. You're going to give it to her, right?
They glared at my husband with intense eyes. Terrified, Oliver stammered.
Yes.
My father and brothers kept pressing him until he finally agreed to the divorce and the alimony. I then presented the divorce papers I had prepared and said, Sign these. We're getting divorced. Reluctantly, my husband signed them, and I left the cafe. Thanks to the support of my father and brothers, I successfully divorced my husband and received alimony from him. I also had my lawyer demand compensation from my former mother-in-law for my injuries, and I received alimony from her as well. I later heard that my former mother-in-law had been questioned by the police about the dog biting incident. She received a stern warning and was forced to give up the dog. Apparently, she had spoiled the dog so much that it began to see humans as weaker than itself. After biting me, it bit my former mother-in-law as well, becoming quite vicious. Her injuries were severe, and she ended up with a broken wrist. Now, she's living a life of discomfort with limited use of her wrist. My ex-husband moved out of the apartment we had shared and returned to his parents' house, with his mother unable to use her wrist properly.
Oliver, can you help with the laundry? Can you cook for me?
But having never done housework before, Oliver couldn't do anything on his own. This led to constant arguments between them, with my ex-husband saying,
"It's your fault this happened in the first place."
They began to fight regularly. Meanwhile, rumors spread among his relatives and co-workers that he got divorced because of his mistreatment of me, damaging his pride. Well, I was the one who started those rumors. While I was in the hospital, I confided in one of his co-workers whose contact information I had. This co-worker was known for being a gossip, so I deliberately chose to share the story with them. It worked perfectly. The co-worker spread the word about my ex-husband's behavior, labeling him as abusive, a mama's boy, and someone who had been divorced, turning him into an easy target at work. Serves him right. With the support of my parents and brothers, I'm now living a happy life. How did you like this story? Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.